Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So welcome to today's panel discussion. My name is Marisha, and then
My name is Vivi.
I'm Dr. Max.
yes. So today we're going to be talking about the topic called Lotus in the Desert. But before we get into the panel discussion, we're going to answer a couple questions, just how we felt. So the first one is, how excited / surprised / shocked were your team to receive this topic?
Well, Lotus in the desert, I was a little bit shocked because I thought I've never heard of a lotus growing in the desert. How does that even happen? Why are there flowers in the desert? So I was a bit surprised, shocked like that.
I guess I was a little confused maybe, because I didn't know how the theme went with the verse. I was like, these seem like two different things. But after some time, I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I could join the two together.
I was excited. For me, I was like, I felt like we could go in so many different ways. So my mind went to like so many different places that what does Lotus and Desert mean? And you guys are gonna see like we cover a lot of different topics because it can go in so many different ways.
So the second question is, what was the planning done to achieve the successful completion of the projects?
Well, we owe a lot to Marisha. Marisha started off, we all got the topic and everything, but Marisha came to both me and Vinny and said, all right, I made a full outline, and I have a timeline for what we're going to do, and you guys are just going to pick up topics and go. So Marisha did very nice with the planning. So.
Well, I don't know. I'm someone who really needs organization. So I was very grateful that the two were kind of on board with my kind of organization and getting everything in line. And it was very good with staying prepared.
Yeah, and it's helpful because we met so many times, just to bounce ideas off of or try to figure out where should we take for each topic. So that was the preparation that was put into it. That was helpful.
So third question is, what were the limitations and difficulties, if any?
This week was a little rough for me in terms of work. So it was very heavy, I had a lot of patients. So I was at work for a long period of time, so 7:30 each night. And then I would come home, eat, and then go to sleep so I could do it back over again. So I had to find a way to okay, I have to wake up early so I can make sure I'm doing this. And then my brain, even while I'm driving to work and coming back from work, I'm constantly thinking about the topics. Hey, what? Oh, that's something I can put into this, and then that I'm organizing in any extra moment that I can do.
Yeah, I had a lot going on this week too. Work also was just so many different projects at once, and people needing this. I would have to get my lunch break, quickly eat my lunch, and then pull out my laptop and work on my presentation. I was in a meeting working on my presentation, and then I was very busy this weekend with a lot of things going on. But just finding times here and there to make it work.
Yeah, I can relate. As a remote worker myself, I found myself with too much time in my hands. It's really hard to get focused and get going with this.
Yeah, but we all had our difficulties, but we all made it work. The fourth question is, how much did each of these members contribute, and maybe some positive things about each of us that we could discuss.
Yeah, well, I'm going to nominate Marisha as the MVP. It's all supposed to be equal work, but Marisha really helped kick everything off and organize us all. So thank you so much, Marisha. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, and I remember one time we had all met, and we were all talking about, me and Marisha were talking about something, and we turned to Max, and he's not listening. But he was lost in the Srila Prabhupada memory, which we ended up using at the presentation. So it was I had to nominate him for being so absorbed in memories that it was helpful for a presentation too.
And I feel you said I did most, but I feel everybody really did equal effort. Nobody felt one person was doing all the work. We all did contribute, and I appreciate Vinny. This is first time doing it, but she fully committed 100% into it. It was just yep, let's do it. And, I would ask, do you need any help? And she's I'm good, and then, it was a good thing. But before we begin, I just want to ask for everyone's blessing so that we can offer this as a humble presentation for the pleasure of Nitai Gaur Nataraj and Srila Prabhupada. And if we make any mistakes committed knowingly or unknowingly, please please forgive us. With that, we can go on to the Mangalacharan prayers, and we can just all say this together. Om
Without further ado, we'll jump in. So the verse chosen for this class is Bhagavad Gita 8:7. So there should be a mic. Is there a mic from the audio center? Oh, okay. Can we pass it to Brajendra Kumar, please? I feel it's only right. Brajendra Kumar's back after a long hiatus. Thank you so much for coming. Oh, actually, before you read the translation, excuse me, then we'll chant the Sanskrit a couple times.
Yeah, so I'll say it and then you guys can respond. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu Mamanusmarayudacha Mayarpita manobuddhir Mamevasyasya samshaya Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu Mamanusmarayudacha Mayarpita manobuddhir Mamevasyasya samshaya. Brajendra Kumar, I guess you can go and do the Sanskrit and have us repeat, and then you can go to the translation.
Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu Mamanusmarayudhyacha Mayarpita manobuddhir Mamevaishyasi asamsaya. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt.
Thank you. So from this translation, so Gavna, do you find any connection to the lotus in the desert? Is there anything that reminds you about the lotus or the desert from this verse?
About when Krishna is talking about at the same time carry out your prescribed duties and fighting, always think of me, right? No matter what situation you are, That's the desert. We're usually in a desert situation because it's full of difficulties, inconveniences, and in that desert, when we think about Krishna, he is the lotus. That's
Wow.
one way.
Thank you, Guru. I shouldn't have asked it. So yeah, the context, thank you very much. The context of this verse is Arjuna asks Krishna at the beginning of chapter 8. It says, who am I? How do I act for fruitive results? Who are the demigods? What is this material world? Just kind of general questions like that. So Krishna tells him just a little bit about these things that he asked, and then launches into a spiel about how to attain him. Now, Arjuna never asked that. He only asked, what is this world and how do I act in it? But Krishna starts going into this whole spiel about how to attain himself. And the first thing Krishna talks about in this regard is death. So the first thing he says, whatever we're fixed on at the time of death, we will attain. And then he says, okay, with that being said, fix your mind upon me at the time of death. And from there, then he shifts backwards and comes to this verse, where he says, now we're here. What to do? What do we do while we're here? So to move on to the purport, now the mic is over there, or move? Oh, okay. Yeah, pass it down to the side of the room. Sorry? Oh, Bhajagovinda. Okay, Bhajagovinda, would you like to read the purport?
This instruction to Arjuna is very important for all men engaged in material activities. The Lord does not say that one should give up his prescribed duties or engagements. One can continue them at the same time think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. This will free one from material contamination and engage the mind and intelligence in Krishna. By chanting Krishna's names, one will be transferred to the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, without a doubt.
Is there any point here that sticks out the most to you?
That third line. One can continue them and at the same time think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna.
And where are we continuing?
So any duties that you have, any engagements that you have that have been prescribed to you, you should be still chanting.
And continue. Thank you very much. So yeah, this comes to one of the more, misunderstood parts about spiritual life. At least for a lot of the Western philosophy, we come thinking that spiritual life, or bhakti yoga, has to be all in or all out. You give up everything and go, or you wait until you're ready for that to happen. So that might lead to a mindset where, you think, okay, I'll start coming to the temple after I give up these bad habits that I have. Or when we come, we rush in quickly and we say, okay, I'm going to stop everything that I don't want to do and do only this. And when we fail to maintain that, then we give up and go right back to what we were doing. It's not sustainable. But if we understand Srila Prabhupada's mood and the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita in tandem, we understand that we're not meant to undergo this massive austerity of leaving everything, moving away. We're meant to keep going, doing what we're doing, and adding Krishna to it. That's the formula. And from then, everything will come. There's no problem. We have this idea where we like in the West, especially the idea of tapasya and austerity, because we do something that's very difficult, very challenging. And so whatever we get on the other side is our own merit. We earn that result. And it's impressive. We can tell people, yeah, stop doing this for a year. And wow, okay. And you gain these powers because of it. But actually, we should forget this idea. Keep doing what we're doing and add Krishna, and the rest will come naturally. This is, sorry. Yes, sorry. So, Krishna consciousness actually is our natural state. We do our duty and we add chanting or whatever it is. But we actually work much harder to be away and separate from that. So anyways, reading this purport and everything, I'm pretty convinced that I see these prescribed duties, keep going. But I'm not really trained to be a soldier, Should I go to the army to be like Arjuna, or what should I do?
I don't think you're cut out for it. No offense. Just kidding. Just kidding. That's a good question. We're not on a battlefield trying to fight a battle in our day-to-day lives, right? Does anybody here have a battlefield? Right? No? Yeah. So even in the Gita, Krishna, when he's talking to Arjuna, he's not addressing the other side, right? He's addressing the internal battle that's going on in Arjuna's head. He's addressing the internal enemies, and we all have that. Our responsibility is a little bit different. We have our temporary dharmas that we do, right? We, living in Orlando, maybe we're married, or we have a family that we have to take care of, and then we have our jobs, right? So some of us are teachers, some of us are engineers. We all have these temporary duties that we're engaged in. And they're real and they matter, but they're constantly changing. So like other parts of our life, or as our life progresses, those duties will start to change. But if everything has a purpose, then we have to ask that deeper question: what's the purpose of the soul? And if the purpose of the soul is devotional service to God, what does that mean? Like, how do we bring that into our life? So I want you to all imagine that you're working a very boring, monotonous job. Maybe you're stuck in some cubicle, you're filling out paperwork, or you're stacking boxes, and you do the same thing every single day. You clock in, you do your work, and you clock out. Now, let's say one day, while you're doing your very boring, monotonous job, the FBI comes in, and they start asking you some questions. And then they start telling you, hey, we're gonna actually use your help because we're trying to catch somebody. And now we're overseeing, we're gonna monitor the work that you do. Okay, your activities haven't changed, your day-to-day looks the same, but now all of a sudden you're excited to go to work, right? So who you're working for makes a difference. If we go to work with the idea that I am doing this and I'm serving God, then that purpose feels renewed again. We feel that excitement to do our day-to-day activities or duties that we have day-to-day. But it's important to know, just because we talked about it, maybe you're not going to go off and be like, okay, I got it, and maybe some of you guys can, but spiritual growth takes time. Trying to change that mindset is going to take some time. One time, Prabhupada was giving a lecture, and he was talking about how we should be 100% Krishna conscious, to be 100% completely surrendered to Krishna. And he was just ramming that point in, like that point home. And at the end of the lecture, all the devotees were looking very serious, and they're looking down, and it was almost like he could read their minds. So, you know, they're probably thinking like 100%, like how can we come to that standard? So he kind of looked at them, and he like relaxed his mood a little bit, and he said, well, if you can be 90% Krishna conscious, then you can also go back to Godhead. And then he started to turn, and he was like preparing to get off the stage. So as he's turning, he says, well, even 80%, even if you're 80% still surrender to Krishna, he will take you. And then he turned, and he's walking down the step, and then his shoulder is like kind of dragging on the ground, and so then he's like looking at the devotees, and he says, well, even if you're 70% Krishna conscious, Krishna will take you. And then he like throws the chadar over his shoulder, and he like holds his head up high, and he's like walking off, right? So we shouldn't be discouraged with this process, because spiritual growth takes time. Change happens when we do things consistently. So if we're coming here to temple every Sunday consistently, that's when we start to see those changes. If we're chanting every single day, that's when we see those changes. We do it a couple days, and then we're like, yeah, I'm not really in the mood anymore, and I don't have time, or I'm going to come this Sunday, but I can't come the next Sunday. Then it's going to make it a lot harder, right? So we got to, step by step, try to get closer to living our eternal dharma.
That sounds like too much work for me. I got a job, I got a husband, that's too much work. Why does Krishna say in this verse that Arjuna should also perform his prescribed duties? Couldn't have Arjuna just given those up and just focused on the constantly thinking of Krishna parts? I mean, isn't thinking about Krishna the most important part anyway, right? I mean, I know you all want me to say that that you don't have to go to work tomorrow, you don't have to go to school tomorrow, and you can give that up. That's what you want me to say. That's not what I'm going to say, because there are some dangers in giving up our duty. So in the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks Krishna, can you define renunciation to me? And so Krishna starts the chapter by talking about the different activities in the three different modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. So one of the first things he mentioned is our prescribed duties. So this is Bhagavad Gita 18:8. And this is describing prescribed duty in the mode of passion. Can we pass the mic to, well, I think the mic is over there. Oscar, could you read the translation of this verse?
Anyone who gives up prescribed duties that is troublesome or out of fear of bodily discomfort is said to have renounced in the mode of passion. Such action never leads to elevation or renunciation.
So what do you get from that verse?
Basically that we shouldn't give up our prescribed duties just because it's uncomfortable.
So in the purport to this verse, Srila Prabhupada says, if by working one can engage his money in Krishna consciousness, or if by rising early in the morning one can advance his transcendental Krishna consciousness, one should not desist out of fear or because such activities are considered troublesome. You know, a lot of times we get scared that what we are doing with our work and our family is going to take us away from Krishna. That's too much time. But it's not true if we go about it properly. So in the next verse, not on the screen, Krishna clarifies that one who performs the prescribed duty but gives up the results of that activity is one situated in the mode of goodness. So really, the danger is not the activity itself, but the incorrect mentality. You know, there's schools of thought out there that believe seizing all material activity is the solution. But not only does that go directly against what Krishna said in the verse we first mentioned, can we even practically execute that? Show of hands, how many people can sit still for 10 minutes without moving a muscle?
That's like
I don't know. I mean, maybe I could go 1 minute. Maybe, on a good day. So, can you imagine just doing nothing forever? I don't think I can do that. So, instead of choosing this difficult path of, giving up activities, we gotta transform the activities, change the mentality. When we do our activities with the mindset of, I'm going to enjoy this, and I'm going to enjoy that, we're gonna get reactions from the work. And that keeps us in that cycle of birth and death, cycle of happiness to stress. But when we shift our focus so that we're doing it for Krishna, we can be freed from those two cycles. When you don't have the attachment to the results of your work, you're always satisfied. No matter what the outcome is for you personally, you're happy because you satisfy the desires of the Supreme Lord. You could be in so much pain after preparing for a festival for many, many days. Personal experience. But you can still have a smile on your face. And we can still perform our prescribed duties while also constantly thinking about the Supreme Lord. I was listening to a class by Amarendra Prabhu this week, and he was talking about the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's on the slides right here. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a high court judge, and he was so expert in his work that when he wanted to retire, the government actually asked him, hey, can you hold off on your retirement in a few years? You're just doing it too good of a job. In fact, when the authorities found out that, he had to travel so far to go to his work, they actually extended the railway line to his house. So that all he had to do was step outside his house, and get on the train, and go. That's it. But while doing his duty, he practiced and preached the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. He composed hundreds of songs, wrote countless books, and while doing it, always thinking of the Supreme Lord. He worked, but he wasn't attached to the money and fame that comes with being a high court judge. He did his duty as necessary and spent the rest of the time engaged in devotional service. That's the ideal. It seems like, I don't know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had it all figured out. Max, do you have it all figured out?
No, yes, all good respect to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but I'm bogged down. I have so many things going on. Nobody built a railway by my house. So no, but the reality is we're not all floating like a lotus, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We're in this life, and the harsh reality of material life is that it's like a desert, right? So a little mental exercise, I want you to transport yourself to a desert, or maybe not even a desert, but that grass field out there, right out front of the temple, with the beating sun, and imagine that extending for miles, right? The sun is oppressive, it's hot, it's humid, you're sweating, and it's unavoidable. Similarly, material life, we have all these requirements that are not going away anytime soon. So you have to make money to afford where you live. Then at the end of the year, each year, you have to find a way to pay taxes on the money you just made, and even that's such a headache. If you're an immigrant, if you're not even native to the United States or whatever country you've chosen to stay in, you might have some trouble to even stay in that place. Visa renewals, all that stuff. And these are requirements. They're not going away. It's like the sun in the desert beating down upon us. And even if you could forget everything for a second, all these, whatever apartment you have, family you have, we still are attached to a body. We have a physical body that we need to maintain. We need to keep it going. So these requirements are not going away anytime soon. So the sun is beating down on us, and we're getting dried up, shriveled up. And it makes us thirsty, the heat of duty is just evaporating all the water from the body. And it comes on the form of mental stress, physical strain on our bodies, and we're drying up, we need some relief. On a really hot day, my Krishna Prema, soaking in water, on a really hot day, you can, and if you don't have some water handy, you can feel yourself, you can see yourself in the future gulping down a big glass of water with some ice in it. You can just feel it, and it feels like your stomach could be a bottomless void. You could just drink and drink and drink. Say, there's no end to the water I could drink. So, we're thirsty, and we're in a desert. So if you're in a desert for long enough, if you've seen movies or anything, I don't know, but what do you start to see? Mirages out in the distance. So the heat of the desert actually, it creates some optical illusion. That's a real picture in a desert. And it looks like a beautiful lake with some trees, some bushes, a nice hill in the background. So you're crawling through this desert, and you see this in the distance, and it looks very attractive. You want to jump in the water. This is not water, it's just more desert, actually. So we've been conditioned by this material world, by this heat beaming down on us. And so we see this mirages everywhere. And that may look different for many different people. You squint really hard, and if you're like me when I was younger, you see a BMW out there. I always wanted a real BMW, that was my favorite thing. Or, depending on what stage you're on, you squint and you see a big house in the distance with a pool, maybe even a hot tub. Maybe you see six-pack abs, and you see this perfect physique that you want to have. These things are all out there as mirages. And so while we see these things, and we're seeing that's water that we want to get some relief. These things will make us happy, they'll quench our thirst. And so we're crawling through the desert, crawling. And while we're crawling, we're still expending energy, so we're all dried up. And so we have these crutches that we lean on too. So all of these habits, Netflix, Instagram, junk food, these are kind of like pit stops along the way that just keep us going, distracted. So man, this sounds terrible. My mouth is drying up just thinking about it. So if this is mirages, all these things like a nice house, all these comforts are just an illusion. How do I actually get relief? Vicky, what would you say?
You're right, Max. This is a harsh desert material world. We live in a world that is full of responsibilities, challenges, distractions. This is our mud, right? So if you've ever seen a lotus flower, it's in muddy water. This is our mud. How do we live in the mud, but we don't get covered by it? So a lotus is a good example of this. It's not impacted by the muddy environment. It's able to maintain its purity. I don't know if you guys have ever seen, but if you ever drop a water on a lotus leaf, it turns into a weed and it rolls right off. It doesn't touch the lotus, it doesn't stay on it. It's called the lotus effect. So the real life example that we talked about with Buckley Winoptacker that Marisha had mentioned, he wasn't isolating himself. He didn't withdraw from the world. He didn't renounce it all. He continued to live in the mud, right? He was a magistrate, he was a government official, and he had a very demanding career. He had family, he had social responsibilities. His life was full, busy, complex. Externally, he was completely in the mud. Internally, he was deeply connected to his spiritual purpose. He wrote these profound spiritual texts that we have, right? So he didn't reject his responsibilities, he spiritualized them. Our responsibilities are a little bit different than that, but we have to continue to still act, we still serve, we still fulfill our roles. We have to continue to be the best daughter, the best son, the best teacher, the best engineer. So we have to take these teachings and we have to reflect it into our life. We have to practice it into our life. Let's say, because this material world is very muddy, someone at work or at school is talking bad about you. Grish, how would you respond? If we're going to be the lotus in the desert, how do we respond to something like that?
I'll tell them that I'm not cool with them.
And then would you talk bad about them?
No.
No? Why not? You don't reciprocate it? No. What? Physical fighting
I
it out.
would tell them that I wouldn't appreciate that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so we have to reflect on these teachings that we have, right? We come every Sunday, we're listening to these things, but if we're not practicing it in our daily, day-to-day life, then what's the point of it all? So the same way, the lotus flower is able to stay clean in muddy water. It also has this quality that it doesn't dry out because the nourishment comes from inside, right? So the lotus isn't fresh because of the muddy water. It's fresh because it's connected to this internal source. And so we have to consistently throughout our day connect to that internal source so that we can draw from it. So personally for me, what I have to do is I have to wake up early in the morning and I have to start my day with prayers and chanting. I have to give the first half of my day to God because then everything else aligns. And then I know how day to day, I have patients that I see, right? So it's like day to day, I know how I want to make sure I'm treating them and all the different personalities that I come across. So that's how I started. But then in the middle of my day, once I've been full in my role of what I do, in the middle of the day, at lunchtime, it's helpful where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pull up Veda base. Is like great because you can carry it with you everywhere. So you have Srila Prabhupada's books on there and you read them, right? And so you remind yourself to connect to that internal source so you can finish the rest of your day. Or if you have breaks in between your day, you can really focus on like, okay, I can just silently chant. Our go-to is we're gonna pull out our phone and we're just gonna scroll, right? But instead we can use those times where we can just internally connect to that source so we can continue to keep living by these teachings day to day.
Yeah. So we talked about the qualities of the desert. We talked about the qualities of the lotus. Now let's combine the two. How often do you see a lotus in the desert? Show of hands. Who's seen one? You have?
Yeah.
I was expecting nobody to raise their hands.
I live in Utah.
Okay. Well, almost never. Almost never. They're very, very rare. It happens, sure, as proof, but it's rare. Lotuses, they grow typically in water environments, and desert, when you think of a desert, no water. But for special souls like everybody here, you can become lotuses in the desert. It said in Bhagavad Gita 7:3, out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. But what does being a lotus in the desert mean? So like Vicky talked about, the lotus draws the nourishment from the inside. It has that internal water source. So similarly, we can draw from that internal water source instead of the external environment that we're around that prevents us from like wilting in the desert. So someone can always think of Krishna, no matter what the environment is. And how do we get to the point? Like Vinny mentioned, the lotus, if you drop the water on the lotus petal, it just goes into a droplet and goes off. It's because it has like like a microscopic wax coating. So it's like super hydrophobic, not just hydrophobic, super hydrophobic. So in that way, actually when that water goes off, it carries the dirt and contaminants in that water droplet and then it just goes off. So just like the lotus leaf doesn't allow water to absorb, similarly we kind of have to like arm ourselves against the material world. Prepare for the fight against the material world, because there's so much out there. Now this slide says fight and remember. So should we fight first or remember first? Which one goes first? Any ideas? Together? Okay, but one has to come first.
Remember?
Okay, I got two different answers. This is good. This is good. Remember? Do you remember which one's first?
Fight first, ask questions later.
All right. Not quite. Actually, you remember first. So, from the translation, Krishna says, "Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time, carry out your prescribed duty of fighting." So, he says you should think of me in the form of Krishna too, not just the energy, the Vishnu, or in the form of Krishna. So you should think of Krishna and remember him. And with that armor, you can then go to the desert and fight. It said to prepare for the fight, you can put on an armor made of remembrance, actually. Now, there are many types of armor. If you read, there's the armor of the holy name. You put that on. Armor of Nishrimadekars, like when we go on a large trip, you usually chant Namaste, Namaste, and that protects you from anything you don't. One practical way that Krishna Prema told me is putting on full body tilak. So you put it on 12 different parts of your body, and it has actually multiple reasons. So it gives us a physical reminder first, remembrance of Krishna. You look into tilak maybe on your arm, this arm, and you're like, yes, I am an eternal servant of Krishna. So it helps you remember it in that way. And it also protects the body. So you put it on your chest, your back, your arms, and it helps protect you from evil influences from those different body parts. So in the letter to someone actually who was in the army, Srila Prabhupada wrote, "So far as your dress is concerned, that is immaterial. But as a soldier, you know that every soldier has got a uniform dress according to the army etiquette and regulation. Therefore, the army of Krishna consciousness must have at least a tilak on the forehead in all conditions. For your business, you wear your naval service uniform. Similarly, if you have tilak on your forehead as a soldier of Krishna consciousness, you may not have so much objecting because that is essential." So we have to remember, one way, put on tilak. And then we have that armor. We're ready to fight. Now, these ISKCON centers that Srila Prabhupada established, they're like oases in the desert. Not just the mirage, but an actual oasis. Now, we have to take advantage of the oasis. So the three of us, we've been traveling in the desert for a very long time. Very long time. Man, I'd like some water right now.
So there's
Wait. It's an oasis. Let's go. And so we trek ourselves there. We're in the oasis. You know what, though? I haven't been to the beach in a while. Can we do a quick timing session? How does that sound?
That sounds great.
I didn't realize actually.
Yeah, they're looking a little pale here, So we tan on the beach for an hour or two. Then we're like, okay, we've had enough of tanning. Sounds like time to go. You had enough tanning?
I gotta get back to the desert.
Right.
I'm a little thirsty.
Nah, you'll be fine. Let's keep going. And so we go back in the desert. Is that going to help our thirst? No.
Killer tan though.
Yeah. You'll look good, but there'll be a shriveled up dead person in the desert because he had no water. No, we have to fill that internal water well. We have to get from the oases, get a bucket, fill the internal water well, and then so that when we go back in the desert, we have a full tank that we can be used to be spiritual in the material desert. When we come to the temple, it's like a recharge point, but we actually have to take advantage and take a bucket. You could take the mop bucket, for example, and use that. Do some service. Read Srila Prabhupada's books. That's, little buckets that you're filling up. And soon you'll be full up, you're not thirsty anymore, And that's taking water from the oasis, not just tanning, just going, and then just leaving. You're not going to get the full advantage from that. So the lotus in the desert represents, I would say, someone who is spiritual in a material environment. No matter where they are spiritual. So from this, I kind of thought of 4 different kind of scenarios based on 2 different type of people and 2 different environments. You got a spiritualist and devotional environment. That's kind of like the duck in the water. Little duck right there. He's always happy, right? Because he's in his natural position. Then you have the materialist and devotional environment. That's going to be a gradual awakening. Spiritualist in the material environment. That's like Lotus in the desert. And then materialist in the material environment. That's like a bottomless well. So we're going to go through each of these scenarios and kind of see what we can learn from them.
Materialist in a material environment. This is the constant rat race of gaining more wealth, more pleasure, more recognition. From a young age, we're being taught, okay, in this materialistic society, your happiness is going to come from external. We're going to have to get wealth, we're going to have to get a house, possessions, a certain relationship. That's the sensory enjoyment life that we are going to live. And so naturally, a materialist from a material environment is going to try to maximize this as much as possible. They're going to go and enjoy all this delicious food, and they're going to seek comfort and luxury. They're going to pursue after relationships. They're striving for success, power, and recognition. And they are going to chase desire after desire after desire. And the material enjoyment is not going to eliminate the desire. It's only going to increase it. The more we enjoy, the more we want. The mind is never going to be fully satisfied, right? So we have this like God-shaped hole because we are spiritual beings. We're not material beings. And we're going to keep trying to shove material things into it to try to satisfy us. And it's not going to really get us anywhere. Actually, Srila Prabhupada often quoted from this verse to try to help explain this state. Is there someone that can read this or what?
There's Mataji's side.
Yes.
Where's the mic? Can it travel over? The migrates. Love it. Yeah, maybe Samantha, you want to read? No, just.
Prahlad Maharaj replied, because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress towards hellish conditions and repeatedly chew that which has already been chewed. Their inclinations toward Krishna are never aroused, either by the instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by combination of both.
What sticks out to you from that?
Persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress towards hellish conditions and repeatedly chew which has already been chewed.
Yeah, chew what's already been chewed. What is that? What do you think that would be like?
It's like picking up gum.
Yeah, ABC.
That somebody's already chewed. Yeah, so that's the thing is that we keep trying to fill our spiritual hole with material things. And we try to then realize, like, hey, I'm not satisfied. So what I'm going to do is try to solve this problem through technological advancements or social advancements, but these are all temporary patches. They're not actually getting to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is the fact that the soul is separated from the Supreme. And so we have to figure out how do we actually get to the root of the problem. Sometimes what happens for a materialist in a material environment is that something in their material life breaks. So maybe they get an illness, or maybe they have loss or failure that they experience in their life. And what essentially happens is that there's some sort of suffering that starts to interrupt this autopilot that we're on, right? So we're all on autopilot, and then something happens, and then we're like, wait a second. What's the point of all of this? Wait, who actually am I? So we start asking these questions. So hardship can actually accelerate that questioning process. And so some people can come to this realization just through curiosity or because of association with pure devotees or something like that. But sometimes what hardship and suffering can do is almost like this blessing in disguise that can actually pull you out of the material world and push you into the spiritual.
Yeah, so that was the first scenario. So now we have the materialist and the devotional environment. If it loads, I promise the slide is there. It's, perfect. So this is like the gradual awakening stage. So this is like how much association can transform a person. You know, when you put unripe fruit around ripe fruit, it actually makes the unripe fruit grow quicker. So because of the great power of association, I would say one can't stay in this stage for very long. You either, leave the devotional environment and go back to the rat race, or you go and become a devotee. It's kind of hard to stay just as this. So to demonstrate this, I want to briefly narrate a couple stories. So does anybody know the pastime described here? Yes, Isham Prabhu.
I'm gonna tell?
No, just say which pastime this is.
Oh, this is the hunter that he was killing the enemies and all the moons
Yes.
saw and-
Yeah. So this is Chaitanya Charitamrita. We actually just finished discussing this story. So Narada Muni, he was walking in the forest path and he saw all these animals that were like almost dead. And so he's like curious, so he walks off the path and then he finds this hunter, bow raised, ready to shoot the next animal. And he's like, wait a second. So when Narada Muni appeared, all the animals flee and the hunter was like, hey, I was just about to get him. But Narada Muni asked the hunter why he was torturing the animals in this way, regarding he explained that that's just how it's been done. His father trained him from a young age to do that, so that's how he did it. And they had a good conversation. And just from the association of Narada Muni, he saw the error of his activities and how this would give so much sinful reactions, and he was completely transformed. And he became actually a great devotee who wouldn't even step on ants. That transformation from half killing animals to not even stepping on ants, just by the power of Narada Muni. So then the next story, I promise you guys, there are pictures on the slides. I didn't just leave a blank slide. While this eventually loads. The next story is told by Divyanga Prabhu, who's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He was living in Michigan, and he saw a van pull up at a gas station, and this van was full of devotees. And he knew there was a big Moody Blues concert going on down the street. So he's like, goes up to the devotees, hey, can I hitch a ride with you? And they're like, yeah, get in, we're going as well. And he's like, all right. So he gets in. The first thing a devotee does, hands him some books. You want to give a donation for these books? He's like, all right, I got $20, here you go. So they're in the van, and they're actually all doing kirtan for the 15-20 minute van ride. And then they get to the concert, and they have a big pile of incense and books, and they ask him, hey, you want to help us? He's like, yeah, sure. And he sees his friends there, and his friends are like, what are you doing? We were going to go to that concert. He's like, oh, I'm just going to stick with these guys. I'm giving out books and incense. I already sold my ticket anyway. So after the concert, the devotee asked, hey, we're going to the temple. Want to come with us? He was like, he was kind of intrigued at this point. He's like, sure. So they went to the Detroit temple, and the devotee comes, puts a plate full of puris, gulab jamuns, halava. And actually, he says he's been doing a macrobiotic diet, which is like brown rice, steamed vegetables. So just contrast the two. And he just ate it, and he was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And so they didn't have time to go back to where he lived in Ann Arbor. So he stayed the night, went to the morning program, devotee tilak, everything. And then they're like, okay, we'll bring you back to your hometown. On the way though, can we distribute some books? He's like, yeah, sure. So they went to the pier, they distributed books. And then, the day was almost over. The devotee's like, so, you still want to go back to Ann Arbor? And Divyanga Prabhu said, nah, let's just go to the temple. And so they went back to the temple, had prasadam, and he never left. So, and now actually he lives doing book distribution up in Alachua. So he wasn't even trying to become a devotee. But just by being around devotees, he was transformed. And there's another story based on that picture. Told by Indradumna Swami. He was in Paris, and they were getting ready for Prabhupada's arrival when there was a knock. They open it. It's just this, basically a bomb. And he was intoxicated, hadn't bathed in weeks, and he's just like, food. They're like, all right, we'll give you some prashadam. He wanted to come in, and the devotee's like, wait, you're too dirty. Nah. So later, Indradumna Maharaj said he was on a japa walk, and he sees in the bushes this guy just like made a little place, and he popped out of the bushes. Food. And they're like, all right, come to the temple, we'll give you some prashadam. And the devotees nicknamed him Pigpen. And Pigpen is from the Peanuts, and it's like he was very dirty, so that's why they gave him that nickname. So one morning, and this is once Prabhupada had arrived, all the devotees went for a walk in the same area, and suddenly Pigpen, he lunged out of the bushes, and he tried to grab Prabhupada's feet. The devotees were like, wait! So they threw him back in the bushes, not letting this dirty man near such a pure soul. And so they went back to the temple, they noticed, hey, we closed that door. It's open now. So actually, Pigpen was in the temple room, and he lunged again, grabbed Prabhupada's feet, and the devotees like, oh no, wait! But Prabhupada's like, no. Prabhupada let Pigpen hold his feet, and Prabhupada, he just massaged Pigpen's head, saying, that's all right, my boy. That's all right. Hare Krishna, that's all right. And the devotees were like, they were just stunned silence. So after Prabhupada left, they were doing the morning program, and Pigpen was just in the middle there because he was still on drugs. And they're like, well, we can't move him. Prabhupada gave him blessings. So nobody dared move him. And so they could just see how affectionate Prabhupada was toward him. And it's described that he was engaged in cleaning the temple initially because he couldn't speak very well. Jai Shri Jai Gauranga Ki Jai. And then he went on book distribution, and he actually became initiated. And his initiated name is Rasadadas. And for many years, he served in France. So we can see, just by mercy of Srila Prabhupada for 20 seconds, completely transformed from an intoxicated, basically homeless man, to an initiated devotee. So it's hard. Even that 20 seconds transformed him. So the materialist and devotional environment is a kind of like a temporary environment.
Well, the opposite of that is spiritualist in a material environment, right? So the perfect example of a spiritualist in a material environment is Hanuman. He is operating majority of the time in non-devotional environments. Lanka was very hostile and materialistic and completely opposite of all the values that he stood for. But he was able to say, no, this is the service that I want to do. Now, he didn't just sit around and say, oh, I love God, and then he just like sat and did his own thing and meditated on God, and that was it, right? He put everything into action. He wasn't just, oh, I love God, and then it ended, right? Everything was a service. And so we have to practice this into our own lives. So here's this little test, right? So let's say you're at school, and everyone, for a materialist, they might say, well, everyone is gossiping and partying, so I'm going to as well. It's really important for me to fit in. How do you think a spiritualist would react in that type of environment? Where's the mic?
We try to blend in.
Would you try to blend in? Ooh, should we blend in to an environment like that? Good question.
Whoever's going to school currently, they can
What were you gonna do?
I
You're
would never do that.
You'd never do
Never,
ever.
What do you do instead?
I play games with my friends.
Yeah. So we don't shift our values to try to belong, right? We don't want to compromise our core principles just to gain acceptance. All right, now I need somebody that works. So the next one, a materialist would say, I found out that people were cutting corners at work, and it was working unfairly. I've been trying to do the work honestly. When nobody else is, well, why should I? Maybe I should do what they're doing. How do we, as a spiritualist, respond in that type of environment?
You gotta do the right thing anyways, work honestly, even if like other people are not.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the Hanuman-like approach would be that you do your work honestly and you give credit where it's due and you want to make sure that you're committed to quality, even if nobody else is. Okay, is anybody in a leadership role that can do the next one? They're leading. Okay. So, as a materialist, they might say, most of the people I'm trying to lead are disengaged and they're only putting in 30%. So, why should I even try?
You gotta show example where they can follow you. So you try to do the best that you can, and don't follow what they're doing. Maybe you can get some kind of initiative where they can, hey, let me try to do this, guys. This is a good way to show that, hey, if you do it the right way, this can happen. Maybe your life will be better.
Yeah, to be a leader in a leadership role, right? Yeah, absolutely. So we want to stay, Hanuman is an example of we stay committed, even to that mission, despite anyone else's attitude. You want to show up prepared, reliable, you're focused, not because the environment is motivating, but because your sense of duty is, right? So Hanuman's example is about staying committed to the mission, despite being in a materialist environment. He had to have a lot of tolerance to be like that. What do you say about this?
Yeah, I would say for spiritualists in the material environment, they have to tolerate so much. And that's their main tool for what they're trying to accomplish. And that's the key word, is they're trying to accomplish something. So, the best examples of tolerance in the modern age is Srila Prabhupada, of course. Everyone knows, coming to America on a boat at an advanced age, suffering heart attacks, health complications, public misbehavior, all the things that he had a right to be outraged about, he calmly tolerated and persisted. So Prabhupada tolerated so much more, thankfully, than we will ever have to tolerate, surely. And we can't, expect to copy Prabhupada or anything, but we can follow in Prabhupada's footsteps and learn the theme that Prabhupada was a pure devotee who was on a mission. And his mission was his guru's instruction, fulfilling his guru's instruction, of course. And Prabhupada never let any of these things stop him. How many of us, honestly, if you think to the hardships Prabhupada faced while trying to do his duty, if you faced any single one of those, wouldn't we think, this is a sign that I probably shouldn't be doing this. I'm not on the right track, right? Yeah, my guru told me, but she got a heart attack. I need to rest. I need to relax, right? Of course. But the thing is, and it doesn't make sense either. Prabhupada is a pure devotee, encountered so many setbacks. I even found out the other day that he was on a ride with disciples in Mauritius, and they had a head-on collision with a car completely out of the blue. Not their fault, nothing. So how could Krishna arrange this? This is Krishna's pure devotee. The deal is that spiritual life and the Guru's instruction is meant for a transformation of us. And everyone has a path that is making them grow to the right purpose. And so that means that any endeavor on the spiritual life, there will be setbacks. We have to expect it. We can't just hope that, okay, well, I was asked to do this by the person who I consider as my guru, and so, everything will go smoothly because this is a spiritual instruction. But we have to understand that persistence is the tolerance. There's so many plans and stuff that we're making for ourselves, and there's setbacks there that are obvious that might say we need to stop. Like, for example, this sound system, audio system, I'm working on it. I changed the cable and I plugged it into my computer, and my computer blew up, actually. And that's happened 3 times. So then, something like that will make you think your own plan, okay, maybe I should stop trying that route. Okay, but the spiritual instruction, the instruction from the guru, you should see a setback as a positive thing. This is what I need to face and learn to get over the setback and keep going. That's a real positive thing in my life. So we can learn to through the Prabhupada's example for that.
Yes. So we have one last scenario. Spiritualist in devotional environment. Kind of what some might say is the best scenario. You know, the prose endless. Sadhu Sangha. Talks on philosophy. And of course, Prashadam. But that doesn't mean we can just put up our feet, call it a day. In Nectar of Devotion, it is said, Srila Rupa Goswami warns, however, that if a person is properly initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, he should not think that simply by the acceptance of such initiation, his business is then finished. One still has to follow the rules and regulations very carefully. So one thing that must be done is we have to know the proper way to act when we're around other devotees. You know, the foundation of our movement is spiritual relationships. And a good foundation helps us build this house properly. Serve, care for the devotees' needs, you know. And there are many ways you can do this, you know. Nectar of Instruction, verse 4, talks about the 6 symptoms of love shared by devotees. Offering gifts, accepting gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasadam, offering prasadam. So, sounds like, you know, you can just hang out with the devotees, life is good, right, Max? That sounds like the best life.
Indeed. No, of course, being with the devotees, the association of devotees, is amazing and is crucial for our spiritual growth. But there's some nuance that we have to be aware of, especially when we're a community and we're all serving to one mission. There's something we have to be aware of. And so, one, we have to be aware that we have influence over each other. And that's a double-edged sword. It could be a very good thing, or it could be a negative thing as well. You know, the positive example is you see devotees, young, inspired, energetic devotees singing kirtan mess or something, and you feel inspired. You want to be like them. You want to feel what they're feeling. And this is wonderful influence. But at the same time, we have to be a little bit careful that, you know, when we become familiar with an environment and with a group of people, we get comfortable a little bit. And we start to, especially if we're in a certain environment like a temple, this temple, for long enough, we start to imagine that we know a thing or two. You know, of course we do. We've learned, and it's good. But there's an application for everything. So you learn a thing or two, and you decide to, you see somebody that's maybe, you know, you deem yourself to be maybe on a different path, or everyone's on their own path, and they're on a different stage of the path. And you see something, you see them doing something that you think maybe is not so conducive to their spiritual life or to those of others. So the first instinct and the first thing that we want to do is we know. So we want to tell them, hey, this thing, you should be doing this differently, or whatever it is. But that's a difficult thing, because actually, we have the influence and we don't know, everyone's so sensitive, and spiritual life can be fragile. And so depending on where you are, you don't know what someone could say that might distract them or set them off in the spiritual life. So it's important in this way to default to the authority. So if you see something happening and you see something that you deem might not be so correct, we have a conversation. We have a conversation with whoever's in charge. We don't go straight to the source. You know, so Samandi, right? So you're learning Mridanga from Krishna Karma, right? So if I came to you and I said, hey, you know, that beat that you're doing that during Jai Radhamabha, that's really good, but, you know, I want you to try this one thing. So as Samandi, what would you do? Tell me, what would you do if I told you that? Let's see.
I'll ask my teacher.
Yes. So yeah, the default, if you're receiving unsolicited advice or something, then you ask your teacher. And if you're me, you try not to give unsolicited advice like that, especially if you don't know what you're talking about. So yes, this is the way that everything can flow nicely. Otherwise, we might create some rifts, disturbances that we are unaware, even as innocuous as something might seem, you know? Like, if I don't know, maybe I don't know any better or something, and I don't know, I tell somebody that they're eating with their left hand or something, and I should, actually you should eat with your right hand. It's something small. You don't know what ripple effect that could have. So it's always important to go up and let everything trickle down. So there's this interpersonal aspect of familiarity, and then there's familiarity with our own spiritual practice as well. So I'll touch on it quickly, but for example, chanting Hare Krishna, Maha Mantra over and over again. This is a skill that we can develop. We can get better at it, especially japa practice, to get faster and faster, and without paying too much attention, we can start doing it more quickly. Or for example, you say to yourself, I've been coming to see Srila Prabhupada and Nitai Gaur Entourage for like years, Surely they must know me by now, so I'll pay obeisances. That's just like, a sign of saying hi, and I'll just touch my head and come up. This is familiarity, this is the danger of comfort. So we have to stay vigilant internally to see how sincere are we doing all these things that we're doing. And the vigilance comes from reading Prabhupada's books. So every day flipping through Prabhupada's books, then you can understand what standard you should be holding yourself to. And only you can judge yourself to that standard. Only you know what you're thinking about while you're doing japa or singing kirtan. That's for us to see. So the practical aspects of familiarity is that the devotees are wonderful. It's important to stay in their association. And just to be practical in this environment is one, if you see something, you go to authority first. And two, you read Srila Prabhupada's books regularly. And then with Srila Prabhupada's books, you don't stay stagnant. You keep moving. They're the wind in the sails of the boat of your spiritual life. Without the wind, you might not sink, you'll stay afloat. But you won't move anywhere either. So you can keep chanting, but if you're not doing it sincerely, then nothing will happen. So that's important. So, Vidya, what would you say, other than reading daily Srila Prabhupada's books, in addition to that, what is one extremely important practice for a spiritual life?
Yeah, and you mentioned it already, this importance of chanting, right? So I want you to imagine a mirror that's covered in dust, okay? A mirror that's not been cleaned for a long time. So the dust is like grimy and it sticks to the glass and it doesn't come off very easily. That's what our mind is like, right? We have gone lifetime after lifetime building bad habits and serving our own senses and serving our ego. We cultivate these bad thoughts and these bad actions. And chanting is a purification process. So it's cleaning off that dust gradually from all that stress and these past experiences and these endless desires that we have. Chanting is gradually doing this process of cleaning this mirror. It's said that if someone chants just for a moment, it never goes in vain. The sound vibration has an effect. It acts, and sometimes it can even protect us from the greatest of dangers in life. And this is the power of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra.
It's definitely extremely powerful. If you remember back to the purport from the beginning, 8.7, it said that we remember Krishna, right? And we think of him, Prabhupada said, by chanting his names. And of course, Prabhupada was always chanting, always remembering Krishna. So he was exemplary in that way. And he remembered Krishna until the very end, not only by chanting, but by following his Guru's instruction. So Prabhupada never stopped his translating and preaching. Even when he couldn't move, even after he stopped eating and drinking, he would have devotees put a mic to his mouth, and he would give purports to the last of Srimad Bhagavatam that he hadn't got to yet. This was the thing he held on to until the very end, his Guru's instruction. And this was his remembrance of Krishna. His body was consuming itself in such a way that it was stripping all the tissue and everything that any regular person would require some crazy combination of morphine and any other drugs just to not be in pain. But Prabhupada ignored all of it. He didn't accept that. He didn't, succumb to any drugs or anything. He only wanted to continue to spread his compassion and follow his Guru's instruction and chant. And at the very, very end, His Holiness Bibi Govinda Swami recounts. He was very close to Prabhupada's face and just looking at him. And I'll quote now from him, I noticed that his lips moved. And when his lips moved, it appeared as though Prabhupada was pronouncing Hare Krishna. And at that moment, his jaw dropped. And the very second when he said Hare Krishna, his lips opened, he saw the color of Prabhupada's body change. And he said, now my spiritual master has left his body. So the very last action that was seen and recorded in Srila Prabhupada was chanting Hare Krishna. And this is what Krishna says in the beginning of the chapter. So, yes, that's a heavier note, but really, when we get to the end, it will be heavy, and it will be important to remember Krishna. And this, what we're doing now, following Srila Prabhupada's example, is just a practice for that.
So we discussed many things today. We spoke about duty, how we can't give that up. We discussed the concept of the lotus in the desert, and then we covered different scenarios and how we live in those. And finally, we mentioned the importance of chanting and how Srila Prabhupada chanted and remembered Krishna to the very end. So how can we apply? Yeah. Well, one thing you do is practice awareness. We talked about the importance of remembering Krishna. So you should always be aware. Am I performing my prescribed duties with the correct mentality? Am I thinking of Krishna? And if you need physical reminders, you can put a picture of Krishna in different places. Put one on your desk at work. Put one in your car. Put one in your kitchen. Wherever you are, and you start being overwhelmed with the material world, you can look at that picture, and Krishna's glance is just looking at you, and you just feel the coolness wash over you. Another tip, practice patience, Remembering Krishna or always being spiritual, no matter what the environment is, that's not going to happen overnight. We have to work towards that. Keep coming to the temple. Keep coming to that oasis in the desert. Recharging that internal water source, and that process will work. So last thing, I want to read something that Srila Prabhupada says, but not me, somebody else. Krish, can you go to the quote book and read the quote from April 17th? Should be like 2 days ago.
Vrindavan, April 17, 1975. In this material world, we're trying to be happy in society, friendship, and love. But the happiness we're getting, that is compared with a drop of water in the desert. Our heart desires real pleasure. That's a mental bliss. We are hankering after Krishna. That is our inner desire. We're trying to get eternal happiness. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai. So always remember Krishna. Never forget Krishna. Yes. Next slide.
Oh, next.
So, time to test your knowledge. Well, okay. There we go. Yeah, I can only find a 1 hour long version for some reason. But there's a lot of people. It's going to take too long if we go through each person. So we're going to nominate 2 people to go head to head answering 10 questions. Who should we pick?
Okay, well, first person I nominate Gopi Bhav to come on and fight head to head. Yeah,
What do you think? What? Oh, Seth Prabhu? Come up to the front. Don't just sit down, you have to come up.
And Family Feud.
Give them a round of applause, everybody. So,
Jeopardy!
not quite. We're not doing Jeopardy today. I'm so sorry. So you're going to be answering 10 questions, and you're trying to be the first person to raise your hand. So, as the audience, I want you guys to watch who raises their hand first. So, all right. So,
sure. Okay. Ready. First question. What was the chapter number and verse number of the Bhagavad Gita verse that we talked about today? Alright, we have 1 minute.
Bhagavad Gita 8.7.
Yes.
Yeah. Second question. What is an example of an eternal duty? Seth.
Serving or remembering Krishna.
Yes. All right. All right.
One to one.
Okay, question number 3. Who was the High Court judge who dedicated his life to the mission of Mahaprabhu? Oh, I didn't see that. Did I?
Do they origin only after you finish the question?
Yes, asking after you finish the question. Set for
It's Divine Grace, Bhakti Road.
Okay, what is one quality of the lotus that protects it from the environment?
It's you said some against the water, but I forgot the actual scientific name. But it's
That doesn't count. You have to remember.
I remember the scientific name they use.
It doesn't have to be the scientific
It
name.
repels water.
The lotus?
Yeah, the lotus. What part of the lotus repels water?
The leaves.
Yes. Okay, we'll accept that. All right. 5th question. What kind of armor do we have to put on to protect ourselves from material life?
Bhakti armor.
What?
Spiritual armor.
Okay. Be a little more specific.
Tila.
T-lock. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Next question. Is a spiritualist in a devotional environment compared to?
Or material environment?
Spiritual.
Oh, right, no,
Spiritualist
sorry.
in a
Sorry.
devotional
Ignore me.
environment. What animal did we talk about?
I'll give you a hint. It was on the slides.
What was the question again?
Duck.
Yeah.
Okay, so who, you can, there's many answers, but who is one materialist that was transformed by a devotional environment? Go.
The hunter.
Yes.
What was her name?
Regarding.
Regard. Okay. Seth, for bonus points, can you remember another one?
What was the question again? Is that person was transformed by a spiritual encounter?
Yes.
The Ladnar?
That was not one that was specifically talked about during the class. So appreciate the try. So 8th question. What is the quality that was mentioned that a spiritualist in a material environment has?
Spiritualist and material.
Main.
That was specifically mentioned in the class.
I don't know. Ability to say no, maybe, or like having those moral standards.
I don't know.
One word starts with a T. Anybody know?
Yeah.
Nice.
Ah,
One point for
yay!
I think it'll be okay.
Okay, what was one of the methods to avoid complacency?
Reading Srila Prabhupada's books.
And last. Now this is one you both answer.
Dun, dun,
So-
dun.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So we'll start with you, Seth. What is one thing you can take away from this class and apply to your life?
Always remember Krishna, don't forget Krishna.
Yes, very nice. All right. Go off.
Yeah, I think like the lotus in the desert, or just like being in a desert, it's such an uncomfortable place, but like to the point where you're like seeing mirages, and you guys are giving me examples of like even like tanning, oh, but like I'm still thirsty and stuff like that. So it's so easy, I feel like, to get distracted in the material world. But having that right association, having like Srila Prabhupada's books and all that stuff like really helps you to stay focused on actually like quenching your thirst and not just focusing on the outward appearance of your body and stuff like that.
Thank you both. So give another round of applause. Lotus in the desert. I hope it was an enjoyable experience and that everybody can at least take one thing away. It is 6:28, so hoping for a little time for question. If anybody has one quick question, we can take it.
Make a comment?
Yeah. Isham, can we get the mic?
Can you pass this mic down? Can you pass
As our philosophy is a Chincha-Veda Vedataka, which means one and different at the same time. The point of having this material as a terrible thing is really tough, and that's true. But at the same time, it's a place created by Krishna. So there's beautiful things here as well. The most beautiful thing here is when someone becomes Krishna consciousness, is to see how he can serve Krishna to help others to become Krishna consciousness as well. So just want to add the point that you have always another perspective in everything.
Thank you for that. 1 minute. Let's fill the space. Sunil Prabhu.
Yeah, from this class we understand that we have a lot of problems in this material world, but still from Srimad Bhagavatam here, kalau dosh nidhirajan asti eka mahan guna kirtana deva krishnasya mukta sangha param bhajet. So we should always chant, and that is kind of the very easy process in this age of Kali compared to the previous yugas. So we should focus on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now it's time.